Good evening, I'm Mike Wise. We begin with some breaking news tonight. The NBA taking an unprecedented step, announcing it is suspending the remainder of the season because of the COVID-19 outbreak. That's after a player who actually played against the Raptors Monday night tested positive for the disease. We want to go right now to our Greg Ross standing by live. He's tracking the story for us tonight. Greg.
To tell you, Mike, I've been covering sports for the better part of 25 years. I've never seen anything like this. Now, this goes into effect at the end of the night tonight. All play will be suspended in the NBA indefinitely because of this positive test for COVID-19. We know that the player who tested positive, as you mentioned, plays for the Utah Jazz. This really hits close to home because of the fact that the Raptors were just there on Monday night, just 2 days ago. Now, here is a statement that was released earlier this evening from the NBA. It says, the NBA announced that a player on the Utah Jazz has preliminarily tested positive for COVID-19. The test result was reported shortly prior to tip-off of tonight's game between the Jazz and the Oklahoma City Thunder at Chesapeake Energy Arena. At the time tonight's game was canceled, the affected player was not at the arena. Now, the NBA is suspending gameplay following the conclusion of tonight's schedule of games until further notice. The NBA will use this hiatus to determine next steps for moving forward regarding a coronavirus pandemic. Now, Mike, I have to say the NBA has not confirmed who this player is on the Utah Jazz, but the Associated Press is reporting tonight that that player is Rudy Gobert. The CBC has not independently confirmed that, but we do know that earlier today the Utah Jazz did send out a tweet that said that Gobert would not play in that game. This was before the game was canceled. They said that he was unavailable because he was sick. Now, let's talk about how this affects the Toronto Raptors. They just returned home from that 5-game Western Road trip that ended Monday night in Utah, and Gobert very much a part of that game, playing more than 30 minutes against the Raptors. Here's a video from Monday, earlier before the game, and it's Gobert who's actually having some fun. This was sent out by a news channel in Utah, and it shows Gobert touching some of the equipment that the media had put out there. Now, this is after the NBA had changed its rules for media access, not allowing the media into locker rooms, and I think he may have been having some fun there, but he was touching some of that media equipment. Now, I reached out to the Raptors tonight to see if they were able to give us a statement. They say at this point they have no statement, but in the coming days, there are going to be a number of questions that the Raptors are going to have to answer. For example, does this mean that all players on the Raptors are now going to have to be quarantined? We can only assume that all of the players will have to be tested as a result of this. And it's not just the players who are potentially at risk. Let's think about the coaching staff and other people who work and travel with the team, like their security and PR staffs. And what about members of the media who were also on that trip with the Raptors? You saw Gobert having some fun playing with their news equipment there. They would have had to flown home on a chartered plane, and there are staff that works on that plane who now also could possibly be at risk. And what about fans who are in the arena for that game in Utah on Monday night, or people who work in the arena in Utah, the referees who participated in that game in Utah? And what about other teams that the Jazz have recently played? We don't know when this player on the Jazz was infected by this virus. They're going to have to look at anybody that this player has come in contact in the recent days, Mike, to try and determine when he would have contracted this disease. So this story is far from over.
So many questions, so many things to keep track of with this, Greg. I want to just add a few other things we've learned right now. You mentioned the Raptors don't play again until Saturday. Norm Powell was out around town tonight. He was at Ballroom. This is a local bowling alley. He was at a public event there interacting with people there. This, of course, before the news came out from the NBA. We saw in the National earlier as well, Major League Baseball looking at revisiting policies where players are signing autographs with fans in the Grapefruit League. Let's talk about what's happening in other leagues as well. We talked about the NBA there. What do we know about other leagues and what they're considering at this point?
Well, we know that the NHL, another league that plays in big arenas like this one right behind me here, Scotiabank Arena, they are also looking at this very, very closely. Now, they had not, remember, the NBA had actually decided that they were going to play games in front of empty arenas before this player on the Utah Jazz tested positive for COVID-19. Now, we know that they're not going to be playing at all. Now, whether or not the NHL, who did actually send out a statement tonight saying that they are watching this very closely, and they are going to look at this situation to determine what steps they're going to take moving forward, but maybe they are going to have to seriously consider things like playing games in front of empty arenas. That could mean here at Scotiabank Arena that we could see the Leafs playing in front of empty seats. We don't know how long it's going to be before the NBA resumes play, if at all, this season, but it could be a little while. And when they do resume play, we're going to have to wait and see what they decide to do in terms of whether or not they're going to be allowing fans in the arenas to watch those games, Mike. So again, still so many questions that are unanswered here. This story is unfolding rapidly, but the way that we watch sports for at least the remainder of this season is going to change, and it's going to change drastically.
Absolutely. Okay, Greg Ross, thanks for filling us in for this tonight, on this tonight. And Hollywood is taking the hit from COVID-19 as well this evening. Tom Hanks and his wife Rita Wilson have tested positive for the coronavirus. They are both in Australia at the moment, preparing to make a new movie there. The actor making that news public in a statement tonight, telling fans that both he and his wife felt tired, like they had colds and some body aches. He says his wife developed a slight fever, so they both got tested, and the results came back positive. They say they are following protocols set out by Australian medical officers, and they are taking a one-day-at-a-time approach. In the studio, of course, contacting everyone else working on that movie as well. Back here in Ontario, there are now 42 confirmed cases of COVID-19. The newest cases involving a man who attended a large conference in Toronto last week, as well as a doctor in a cancer care centre in Hamilton. This as the province says it has a contingency fund in case the situation escalates. Lisa Shing has the latest.
The individual attended the PDAC conference.
One of the province's newest cases of COVID-19 involves a man who works here at the Ministry of Northern Development and Mines building in Sudbury. He went to an international mining conference in Toronto last week, attended by tens of thousands of people around the world.
We are not aware that the individual was in contact with a known confirmed case. So these are worrisome. These are of concern.
Officials suspect he contracted the virus at the conference, then returned to Sudbury to work for a couple of days before experiencing symptoms. Because some Laurentian University classes take place in the ministry building, the school has cancelled all classes, moving them online. Now, in a memo obtained by CBC, the province says it's only approving business-critical out-of-province or international travel.
We all know that they're a particularly vulnerable group of patients.
And a second case, an oncologist at Hamilton Health Sciences Juravinsky Center who returned from a personal trip to Hawaii has tested positive. The doctor was in contact with staff and 14 cancer patients.
We are very pleased with the precautions that were taken yesterday by the individual who was involved. They were very responsible in their actions, presenting quickly for assessment as soon as they became symptomatic.
Both patients are in self-isolation. Today, Toronto's medical officer of health emphasized people who were at the conference in Toronto or those who attend large gatherings generally shouldn't see a doctor unless they have symptoms.
Brief interactions, including walking by a person who may be infected with COVID-19 or briefly being in the same room with that person, these kinds of situations are considered to be low risk.
This isn't the time for politics. It's a time that we stick together.
There still isn't any local transmission in Ontario. That's when someone contracts the virus without being able to identify the source. In case the situation worsens, the province has set aside $100 million for supplies and is assuring people it has a plan.
One hospital in particular may be the one that will receive the patients who have COVID-19, allowing the other hospitals to take up the work that was normally done by the hospital that's now going to deal with COVID-19.
So far, no details on which hospitals would be involved in this. The province did say, though, we'll get more details about the assessment centers for COVID-19 that'll be located away from hospitals in the coming days. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
There's another big development in this story south of the border. U.S. President Trump is suspending flights between the United States and continental Europe as of Friday at midnight. The one-month suspension is an attempt to slow the spread of the disease to North America. Now, that restriction in air travel, of course, comes as Ontario's busy March break period gets underway. With the coronavirus declared a pandemic, are people starting to change their spring travel plans? Kelda Yoon looks into that and into the latest advice for travelers.
Pearson Airport says it expects to see about 144,000 people pass through on Friday, on par with last year's March break numbers, despite concerns over COVID-19. Samantha Backus and her mom Fazia have spring travel plans to Florida.
I'm not very concerned. I view it as just another strain of the flu.
I have a little concern, so I'm rethinking.
Jessie Smith will be heading to the Azores Islands in Portugal.
Never any thoughts on canceling?
No, not at this time. And then this island only has one case so far, so I'm not too concerned right now. If I was going to a more high-impact area like Italy, I'd be a lot more concerned.
Sherry Boyda, meanwhile, is glad her work trip to Mexico next week has been canceled.
I think people are underestimating, I think, perhaps the effect of COVID-19. We don't know exactly how people will react, how it will diminish over time. I think too many people are comparing it to the flu, and it's not exactly like the flu. And there's just so many unknowns.
The official word from the province: ask yourself the following questions before taking off.
Do you need to go on the trip? Where are you going on the trip? What are your risk factors of you going on the trip? Do you have health conditions? What's the risk factor of taking your children on the trip?
While March break numbers are presumed to remain steady, Pearson says year-on-year passenger numbers are expected to be affected.
A flash from Air Canada is a little clearer now.
Howard Eckstein has already been seeing the effects. He's been in the travel business since the mid-'80s.
It's frightening. I have people that are canceled for July of this year.
He says he's also seeing fewer advanced bookings. He says if it keeps going on like this, he will be out of business.
If the coronavirus is still hanging around like it is come September, October, when people start having to put final payment down, that's going to be the telltale sign.
Meanwhile, both Air Canada and WestJet announced today they will be waiving fees on flight rebookings for tickets purchased within a given time period. Kelda Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
Colette Kennedy is away tonight, so Suzanne Leonard joins us with her first look at the forecast this evening. No complaining about it being kind of milder today. Not as warm as it was earlier in the week.
That's right. That's right. We were seasonal today, Mike, and I'm glad you picked up on that. We can't complain, even though it's cooler, when we are at our average for this time of year. So a typical March day, we had more cloud cover in the afternoon than we did in the morning. 3 degrees, around 4, Kitchener, London, no teens. That's a 7 in Windsor, not a 17. What's ahead? Well, a quiet night. I'll show you temperatures in just a second. Some variable cloud to mainly clear conditions. 7 a.m. dry commute heading in. Notice this system off to the north. Now that is a strengthening system. Snowfall, but not for us. North of Georgian Bay, we will see some scattered showers. Moving in through the latter part of the day, shouldn't be a significant amount of rain, but it will certainly be a wetter and a windier end to the week as well, Mike. So daytime high 7, warmer tomorrow. We'll get into the weekend a little later on.
I can live with 7. Thanks, Suzanne.
The weather update is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
Well, talks were back on today between the province and the union representing elementary teachers. Well, despite those talks being back on, though, some teachers were picketing outside of their schools today. The Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario says if bargaining doesn't produce an agreement, it will resume job action after March break. Contract talks with the unions representing English Catholic teachers and French language teachers are also continuing. So watch as this man slowly but successfully steals another man's backpack at a Toronto restaurant. Inside, crucial documents he had on hand for a recent citizenship application. We'll have his story and what he'll do next after the break. We have a warning tonight from a Mississauga man about just how easy it is to be the victim of theft at a busy fast food restaurant. In just a few minutes, a thief took off with almost every piece of identification he had, including his passports. And it was all caught on video. Far Morali shares his story.
These are the moments right before Balaji Devata Venkatesh was robbed.
I didn't even realize that this person's pulling this backpack.
Venkatesh was here at Chick-fil-A on Friday night when it all happened. He's seen in this security video at a countertop, his back to the camera, eating with a friend, his black backpack on the ground to his right. In the 8-minute-long tape, this man, seen walking in front of the gray pillar, circles Venkatesh's table. He stands near him at several points while talking on his phone. At least twice, he subtly pulls Venkatesh's backpack away from the table with his foot. A few minutes later, he picks it up and walks right out the door.
It was the biggest shock of my life because it never happened to me.
What was actually in that backpack made a bad situation worse. Venkatesh's laptop, SIM card, and a slew of crucial documents he had on hand for a recent citizenship application.
I lost my passport, both Indian passport and Canadian passport, and I lost my citizenship certificate, and I lost my landing papers. Basically everything that are needed to apply for these documents, I lost them as well.
The people committing these crimes are looking for a victim of opportunity.
Toronto police confirmed they are investigating, but say this type of theft happens daily.
So whenever these types of items are lost or stolen, a police report needs to be put on file in order to retrieve these belongings, which is why it's always recommended never ever carry those personal original documents with you at all times unless you need it.
Without ID or passports, Venkatesh says he's unable to travel right now. His message to others, be vigilant of what you carry and how you carry it.
If it can happen to me, it may happen to you.
Farah Morali, CBC News, Toronto.
Still ahead, how a coronavirus outbreak could affect some of Toronto's most vulnerable residents. Those without
I'm
homes.
extremely worried about this because I know how deadly it could be if it reaches the shelter system. You know, a lot of our folks are quite ill and quite sick as it is right now.
What shelter workers and street nurses are asking the city to do. Coming up next. There are concerns here in Toronto about what might happen to the city's homeless population during a disease outbreak. Tonight, advocates are calling for the city to take action to keep COVID-19 out of the city's shelter system. Nick Boisvert has that story.
So I'm going to read the 7 names that we're adding to the list today.
On the second Tuesday of every month, Toronto's homeless community gathers at this downtown church for a solemn occasion.
All of these women died in January.
Hundreds of names have been read over the years. People who work with this community fear there could be many more to come.
I'm extremely worried about this because I know how deadly it could be if it reaches the shelter system. You know, a lot of our folks are quite ill and quite sick as it is right now.
Advocates say the city's homeless could be the hardest hit by COVID-19 because conditions on the streets and in shelters are no place for an infectious disease.
Shelter users all live together in a crowded space, and so if somebody does get a virus, or the coronavirus in this case, it would spread so quickly.
To prevent that, a group of shelter workers and street nurses are calling for more proactive strategies, including the screening of shelter users, the addition of more beds, and motel rooms for homeless people who need to be quarantined. Last week, the city acknowledged those concerns.
There are infection prevention and control guidelines for those particular centers, and we're enhancing that ongoing regular advice.
In the meantime, shelter volunteers say they're taking some extra precautions to keep themselves and the homeless healthy.
For what we can do, try and, we keep the kitchen very clean. We sanitize all of our utensils, our plates and everything, our cups.
But without more help and funding from the city, volunteers say those efforts can only go so far.
So we're in a hard spot right now, and especially because they're homeless.
Nick Boisvert, CBC News, Toronto.
Suzanne Leonard's back now with her extended forecast. A milder day tomorrow, but Friday morning looks kind of messy.
Friday morning is going to be interesting, Mike, because we're going to reach our daytime high, maybe even some double digits, some 10 degrees. Don't get out the shorts or anything yet. It's not a 17 again. That would be early Friday and a windy day. That will be the hallmark of Friday. We'll get to that in the weekend in just a moment. The almanac, if we open it up for March the 11th, always good to get a little perspective on the situation. 3 is a normal daytime high. -6 is an average low at this time of year. We have been a lot warmer, a lot colder, and dare I say it, we've been a lot snowier as well. So our next system moving in, and Mike alluded to it there, we've got a little bit of cloud cover on the increase through the day tomorrow, especially later in the day. Precipitation outlook, well, that's the key, and there's the boundary, but the main energy is off towards the north, so significant snow, northern Ontario, northern Quebec. Our ski hills, March break, they're hanging on to as much snow as they can. It's a key time of year for them, so know that they do have some snow, and they're making the best possible conditions that they can for you. There will be some passing flurries. For us, it's passing showers. Notice 7 a.m. morning drive time. Largely some dry roads or drier conditions. We're drying out, but the winds are picking up. Quite a sharp frontal boundary. The winds will be gusting through the afternoon hours. Now, by the late day tomorrow, notice the southeasterlies are 30 to 50 up towards Collingwood, Huron and Perth counties. They're still fairly light around the GTA, but as we get into Friday, we switch to west and northwesterlies, and that's when we'll see our sustained winds, 40 or so kilometers an hour, and our gusts could easily top 60K. So a blustery afternoon. If it's a garbage day for you, yeah, get the bins in as soon as possible. Slight chance of a sprinkle in Windsor overnight tonight. Mix of sun and cloud for tomorrow. Overnight for the GTA. Quiet weather. Temperatures a bit above average for this time of year. And a mix of sun and cloud and above average by a couple of degrees for your Thursday. It's always good to have perspective. When we talk about weather, there's a lot of cold air coming into Western Canada. So while we'll have some near seasonal temperatures this weekend, it'll be 20 degrees colder for our friends in Calgary. So that's our story there. Our long range outlook is the temperatures going up and down. We get into March break this weekend. We've got a lot of sunshine on Saturday and on Sunday. And I hope you have a great one.
And some vital perspective there. It's a lot colder elsewhere. Enjoy the warmth we do have. Thanks,
That's
Suzanne.
right. You're welcome.
We have an update to a story we brought you a few days ago about a group of Toronto doctors who got together to record a song as a catchy way of reminding you to remind you how to avoid the spread of the coronavirus. Well, that song's out tonight.
Because I'm washing your hands all the time to keep germs off of you. Because I'm washing your hands for this long age, that's what you gotta do.
Well, this was all in response to a challenge from the head of the Ontario Hospital Association asking doctors to find ways to share on social media reminders for how to properly wash your hands. You can watch similar videos by searching for the hashtag #HandWashChallenge. And that is our newscast for tonight. We will continue to follow tonight's developments in the NBA tomorrow on Metro Morning. Of course, the NBA suspending play for the time being. We're also expected to hear what the NHL's plans are going forward. The Leafs are slated to take on the Predators tomorrow night. We'll follow those stories tomorrow at 6 and again at 11. Good night.